So here we have the finished version of Heart Piercer, a shawl by Ronnie Warren. It's been knitted and I'm now ready to block it. So this video is going to be about blocking this shawl. So here is a portion of the back side, and I can show you where I've woven the ends in, and I've left little tails. After it's dry from blocking, then we'll trim these tails. So you can see them on, and leave them long enough that you can find them, because otherwise you'll miss them and they won't get trimmed off until you give it to the recipient, and then they'll find them. So when you are blocking something, what you're actually doing is setting it in its final shape. You're getting it wet somehow by steam or spraying with water, laying a damp towel over it, or immersing it in water, and then laying it out to the shape that you want it to be when it's final. Some people think that blocking also means stretching, and you'll often hear the word overblocked. Blocking and stretching are two completely different things. Yes, you can stretch a garment or a shawl while it's wet and block it stretched. In this case, this shawl does not need to be stretched. This is the shape that it's going to be. There's no lace here, so we don't need to open any up eyelets. So we're not going to stretch it. We're going to just let it be in the shape that it would like to be once it's wet. Okay, so here's the shawl. Here's the water that we're going to block it in. This is just a glass bowl with room temperature water. There's nothing added to the water. I generally don't add things. I don't like things that are left in the fiber, because I think that maybe that sometimes helps attract dirt later on. So I just use plain room temperature tap water. And I fold the garment, whatever it is we're going to be blocking, I fold it up to make it into a compact size. This also keeps it from stretching out of shape while it's wet. And then I'm going to submerge it in the water. Now this is not superwash wool, this is just regular wool. So we don't want to agitate it while it's in the water, because you can felt it. So I just push it down like this slowly. I don't want to flood the water everywhere, and allow the air bubbles to start coming out. Now if you don't push down on it, this will float on the water, and I've tested that. I've put a swatch in a cup of water. It floated on the top. I let it sit there all night. When I came out in the morning, it was still floating on the top of the water. So wool does not absorb water quickly, although once you submerge it, it will. You can see the air bubbles coming up, and I'm not agitating it. And I'm just going to hold my hands down here, pressing down till I get quite a bit of the air out, so that it'll stay under the water, or at least just under the surface of the water. And then we'll leave it here for about 20 minutes. So I'll join you back here in 20 minutes. Okay, so here we are. This has been in here 20 minutes. You can leave it in longer if you want, but at least 20 minutes. It takes about that long for the wool to fully absorb the water. And you're going to need some towels. I also use yardsticks in this process. I use these pins, which I love, as well as possibly these types of pins. These need to be rust proof. These are the Drexel, I think. I'll put a link to them in the description. So the first thing we're going to do is just squeeze out the excess water, and you don't want to wring it. Just squeeze out the excess water. Now the reason I fold it before I put it in here is to control any accidental stretching. If you fold it up, then you're not going to accidentally overstretch it. And we're going to put it on the towel and open it up. We may not open it all the way flat. I'm just going to open it like this, kind of spread it out on the towel a little bit, and then I'm going to roll the towel up. And I'm pressing on it. And give it a few seconds to absorb the water. You can even leave it in here longer. You could leave it in for 5 minutes or so. If you're doing a sweater, you might want to leave it in for a few minutes. I wouldn't leave it overnight though, because you'll get some wrinkles in your knitting. Okay, let's see what this looks like. A lot of the water came out. And you can see it on the towel here. It absorbed a lot. In fact, it might be good to go. It feels really good. Now, I'm using, these are just a styrofoam insulation. They're 2x4, so with two of them together it makes a nice blocking area, and it's non-absorbent. You'll hear a lot of people say that they put a towel over this, but it takes longer for things to dry if you put a towel or any other fabric over your blocking board. It dries the quickest if you just have it on a non-absorptive surface, if I could speak. So we're just going to spread this out and put it in the shape that we want it to be. And you can manipulate it while it's wet. And I'm very careful at this point to really take my time and line things up. For example, there's the center line that comes down here, and I want to make sure that it's straight and not weaving to one side or the other. So I'll get it the way I want it. And then I might even put some pins in it to make it stay that way. I'm just going to, it's like tacking, basting if you're quilting, just to get it to stay where I want it. And see how this is wavy here? I want that to be straight. I don't want it wavy. Okay, that's a good starting point. Then we're going to make sure these lines are all straight also. So you can see how this is wavy here. I'm going to straighten those up. And sometimes you have to like get down and look, angle sideways to look at it to make sure they're straight. However you put them right now is how, and leave to dry, that's how they will stay once they're dry. So to me, blocking is probably the most important thing you can do to your finished garment. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to work on this area here, same thing. Get it lined up. So the lines are straight. And I'm just tapping it, patting it. I'm not really stretching it or doing anything. And I look at it from an angle. Then also I'm going to check and see if the distance is about the same. So this is our center point right here. I'm going to put a pin. This is the absolute center of the shawl. So let's see if our distance is the same to the end of the red. That's 15 and 15. So this side is not pulled out far enough. We're going to pull it out a little bit further so it's the same as the other side. And re-straighten. Now both sides are about the same. So we'll put a pin there to secure that. We know this part is good right now. So we're going to move out. We're going to do the mosaic section next, the slip stitch section. You especially want to make sure where there's color changes, like from the red to the black, that line is straight, because that will be most obvious if it is crooked. This is these single lines like this, you want to make sure they're straight. Now where you have your increases here, of course it's going to turn and jog to the edge. That's to be expected because of that type of increase. Not the type, but the placement of the increase. We want this to be open about the same. I'm just eyeballing it, but it looks pretty good. Here, see how this is squiggly here? We're going to make that straight. So it may take you a little bit of time to block, and sometimes in the summertime here in Bakersfield, it can get pretty warm and dry, and things can actually dry before I'm finished blocking them, so I'll use a spray bottle and spray it every once in a while to keep it moist while I'm blocking it. So let's check our measurement again. So now we've got, to the red line, I've got almost 21, and that looks really good. So this part here, you can see it's kind of flaking out like that. That's because of the corrugated ribbing. It doesn't have quite as much stretch, so we're just going to stretch it out. At the same time, making sure our columns of stitches, see these columns coming this way, you don't want them going wavy. That's looking pretty good. Okay, let's look at this one over here. This is looking good too. Okay, I'm liking this. I think this looks really good. So we're going to let it lay here until it's dry. Yep. And it'll probably take overnight. If you have a fan in the same room where you're laying it out, go ahead and turn that fan on to circulate air. It helps. I frequently come back in every once in a while and recheck it, and I might pat it a little bit here, pat it a little bit there. I'll see something. And when we're completely done, then we'll trim off these, the tails from where we wove the ends in. But I think this is looking really, really nice. There you go. Okay, so now this is set here all night, and it's dry. So we can feel it's dry. So we're going to take the pins out. And as I said before, I did manipulate it a little bit more. As I came back and checked it, I straightened out these lines here so that it was here, and I double checked the length of it on this side and this side. So those are the same length. I had to adjust that a little bit. So we'll take all the pins out, and we're going to take a look at it. So this is it. It's now dry. It's absolutely lovely. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to work on trimming these little ends. So now we can see these ends where I wove them in, and once it's been blocked, they are just not going to come out, because when we wove them in, we used the technique for the garter stitch, which I have the attached video that you'll be able to watch again if you want. All of these are stable. They will not come out. So we can take our little scissors, and we're just going to trim them off and leave about 1/8 of an inch. And at this point, they will be invisible and very durable. The reason that you needed to leave that little tail to begin with is so you can see them, because once it's blocked, they can be difficult to find. Which is good. That's a good thing. And so on. So there's the shawl. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. There's a link to the shawl pattern in the description. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. There's several videos in conjunction with this shawl. There's a playlist, and I'll have that linked also in the video itself and in the description. And I hope you come back and see some more of the videos. Happy knitting!